So great to have all of you here today. Thanks for doing the poll and thanks for your willingness to learn more about this project. Maine Lakes is really excited about being involved, and I'm going to just jump in and tell you a little bit about Maine Lakes. I'm going to fix one thing on my computer screen here. Okay. A little bit about Maine Lakes. Well, actually, before we start that, we're trying to be good about this in our presentations and really ingraining the acknowledgements in our presentations. So there's a lot of land acknowledgements out there that people are speaking to before they present. But I think for us, for Maine Lakes, it's really important for us to be thinking about Indigenous peoples and their treatment of how they lived with and kept our lakes and ponds clean and pristine and in excellent shape for many generations. And so we thank them for that, and we try to do our best to follow in their footsteps and work with them to continue the work, to continue to keep Maine's lakes in sort of their the kind of shape they were in when our Indigenous tribes were in charge. And in that vein, we also support tribal sovereignty and do what we can in the legislature to restore ceded territory, and again, work with them and in collaboration with Wabanaki tribes to maintain clean, healthy lakes. So a little bit about Maine Lakes. I won't spend too much time with this, but we were formed in 1970. We were the Congress of Lake Associations. Then we became the Maine Lakes Society, and now we're simply Maine Lakes. And so our basic mission is to preserve and protect the value of Maine Lakes to benefit everybody, everybody, including wildlife, anybody who uses them, to both today and long into the future. So we work a lot on smart lake policies. There's some really great bills going through the legislature right now to protect lakes, including a wake boat, a bill that would keep wake surfing activities 500 feet from shore, which is really important for loons because of where they nest. We do a lot with outreach and education. We don't have a current, we had for years, we had a boat program for school age kids. We don't have that now, but we're working on things like bringing together freshwater educators into a freshwater education network to try to grow freshwater education in far-flung and sort of more rural, more remote schools, schools that don't have a local watershed district or watershed organization in their community. That's a big goal of ours in the coming couple of years. And then we focus on actions that people can take for lake protection. And that primarily is our Lake Smart program. So I'll just tell you a little bit more about all of those things. I won't take too long, but I like to show this slide. This is kind of our mission in pictures. This is what we want to see out on our lakes every day, all summer long. We want places for people to do their thing. We want places where wildlife can grow and reproduce. And we're interested in developing the next generation of lake stewards who will also take care of this important resource. And also the text there is just a reminder that our lakes are public resources. So any lake over 10 acres is considered a great pond, and they are owned by the people of Maine. So they belong to all of us, and we need to work to protect them, to keep them clean. I lost my train of thought. They belong to us all. It's a public resource. Good reminder. Hang on one second. Oh my goodness. Okay. So some of the resources we offer, the ways we accomplish our mission. We have a lake library that we like to keep stocked with helpful publications. So lakes.me/library. We have resources for homeowners, for lake visitors. Take a look if there's something you're looking for in your role. I don't know, some of you are probably from lake associations. If there's any ever publications that you feel would be helpful, just let us know. We're always game to find helpful topics that people want to know more about and get the word out. A good one there is the caring for your septic system. That came about because some lake association folks were really interested in, getting the word out. And we had an interested volunteer who basically put all the text together for us. And then we worked with him and we did some design work, and there we have this great publication. So we look to our volunteers and folks to help us with our creating our outreach publications. We have a lake book. It's a 5x9 publication, spiral bound. It's got a little bit about everything, and we love to share that with people. I mentioned Lake Smart. That's our flagship program. It's a program where we work with homeowners to improve the resiliency of lakeside properties in the face of especially in the face of larger, more frequent storms that are bringing more and more stormwater runoff and associated nutrients into our lakes. So we spend a lot of time on Lake Smart. About half of our staff resources are spent on Lake Smart. And then we're in advocacy. We're in Augusta whenever we can be, to both advocate for positive bills and to sort of play defense against bills that are trying to roll back lake protections. And then, and of course, a loon restoration project we've been involved with the last couple of years with Maine Audubon. So last year we were focusing on rafts. So on the bottom left, there's a group of volunteers with a raft that they're about to launch. And this year we're pivoting to do the outreach, and Maine Audubon is handling all the loon raft launches this year. So Olivia and her coworkers have their hands full. Lots of rafts. I think it was 52 rafts they're launching this spring. So I'll talk a little bit more about the project in general. So thanks for indulging me on my Maine Lakes plug. The Maine Loon Restoration Project the goal overall is to replace loon lives lost from an oil spill. And we are going to do that by increasing loon nesting success and decreasing loon mortality. And the project in Maine, you can see we have 4 partners. Maine Audubon leads all the efforts. They got the funding, and they contract with Maine Lakes, with the Penobscot Nation, and with Lakes Environmental Association over in Bridgeton. And so we all have different roles in the project, and we're also part of a broader loon restoration project across New England. So Massachusetts, New York, Vermont, New Hampshire all got funding from this source and are doing somewhat similar things in each of those states. So just a little bit of background on where the money comes from. Funding comes from the Bouchard oil spill, the Bouchard 120 oil spill happened April 27th, 2003. And you might say that is a long time ago, and that was a long time ago. But what happened on that day in April 2003 is a tanker ran into a rock, and you can see the green circle there is where the spill was. On this map, you can see all those green lines are migration paths of common loons. And you can see that, and then the red is where there's high density of loons. And you can see it spilled in an area with a high density of loons, number one. And then you can see all of those migration paths. You can see loons, lots of Maine loons typically are in that area in the winter. So the spill happened in April. There were still lots of migratory loons on their way traveling north. So we know that there were Maine-bound loons that were subject to that spill. So what happened? 98,000 gallons of number 6 fuel oil was spilled, affected about 100 miles of shoreline, and in the recovery efforts, they collected 30 species of birds, 479 dead birds collected, but we know that the totals of dead birds from the spill is probably much higher, but that's what was collected. Specifically for common loons, they collected 76 dead loons and then 128 oiled loons. And interestingly, of course, the oil is so damaging to the skin and the feathers that only 9 of those oiled loons that were recovered survived. So through a long process of modeling and I don't know exactly what went into it, but they estimated that 531 common loons died from this oil spill. And it took almost 20 years to move from the spill to restoration. So in other parts of the settlement, the spillers responsible for trying to fix the damage that was done, the environmental damage that was done during as a result of the spill. And so other pieces were settled earlier, but this loon piece unfortunately took, like I said, almost 20 years from when the spill happened to when the funding got out to begin the restoration work. But it finally got out 2 years ago. And like I said, organizations across New England and New York have been working since then on these restoration efforts. So how do we replace loon lives lost, especially when it's been 20 years since the damage was done? And so, as I mentioned, different states are doing different things, but Maine's approach is to focus on 3 objectives. So placing and monitoring rafts. So these artificial rafts that you see here, they are really, we know research has shown that these are floating artificial rafts is a really an artificial raft is a really good substitute for natural nesting habitat. And if you float, the advantages to floating a raft, of course, are it goes up and down with water level changes, so you don't have to worry about so much about flooding, and they're also likely a little more protective from predators because they're out in the water. Then number 2, the second objective was to add signage at high-risk lakes. So lakes where we know there are either dead loons from boat collisions or lead sinkers or other sort of human-related causes, add signage there to try to reduce risks, and then outreach, statewide work on outreach to get the word out of how we all can protect loon nests. And then the third objective was lead tackle reduction and outreach. So again, continuing the fight over to reduce lead tackle that's out in the water. So I mentioned Maine Audubon is focusing on objective 1 and 3. So they have they're doing all the raft work, as I mentioned, that Olivia's doing, and then the lead tackle reduction and outreach is based at Maine Audubon too. And then Maine Lakes is kind of taken on number 2. So looking at signage and doing outreach efforts statewide. So that's how this Look Out for Loons program was born, focusing, as I mentioned, signage and outreach. And so the things that we're interested in doing to reduce disturbance and increase success is to reduce nest washout. Here, these are some of the things: reduce nest washouts from wakes, try to keep parents from flushing or flying off of the nest during the nesting season, when they have eggs and when they're most vulnerable. We'd like to reduce boat collisions. We know after lead sinkers, or right tied with lead sinkers, both leading causes of death, boat collisions are a big problem for loons. And separating parents and chicks, because you think they would know how to get back together. They don't always, and every summer parents are separated from chicks. They can't find each other, and the chicks can't survive away from their parents. So those are some of the priorities in this project, is if we can reduce those kinds of impacts, those kinds of disturbances, that we can increase loon nesting success. Yeah, so reduce loss from human disturbance and increase nest success and adult and chick survival both. So I'm just going to run through kind of, well, okay, one more slide, and then I'll run through the sort of menu of options that we're working on for this summer's Lookout for Loons program. So this is the inaugural year. So you have to be a little patient with us. We're pulling all the pieces together this year. So the pros of that, of course, is that we're open to ideas, we're receptive to more new approaches. We're just trying to figure out how things are going to work. So you have a real opportunity to be involved this year and help us figure those things out. So our goals this year are to recruit volunteers like yourselves. We've created a menu of activities for the summer, and I'll share what that menu looks like. We want to assess as the season progresses. We want to see what works and what doesn't work, and if there's other things we can do. So again, a pro to this season is to have your input and see if there are other things we could or should be doing to reach these goals of less disturbance, higher productivity. And then we'll make whatever changes we need to do to improve the program. And ideally, it'll be a 3-year project. So this summer and the summers of 24 and 25, both, we have funding through this project to have someone on staff and to provide the tools that you need to be successful. So we do have a staff person. His name is James Reddick. He had a prior commitment. He was hired at the beginning of he started April 1st. He had a prior commitment to be out of the country this time, second 2 weeks of April. So too bad that he's not here, but he will be back May 1st, and he'll be your primary contact for this project. And he's a enthusiastic naturalist. He has a background in training, actually in the healthcare industry, that I think is going to be really helpful for all of you who interact with him. So he'll be back next week, and he'll be ready to jump in and really focus on moving this program forward. And the sort of the downside is, for this year is that we is just the patience that will be required as we pull things together and get things ready to go. But it'll be a year of growth and a little bit of experimentation, and we're glad you're here to learn more about it. So the menu of options for this summer and the things we're thinking about for Lookout for Loon volunteers would be, and I'll just walk through, there's just a handful of these, and then I'll focus on taking questions, and we'll have just a Q&A, and hopefully I can come close to answering your questions. There's some things I still don't know about this program and how it's going to roll out, but so some of the things we're thinking about is presentations. So giving a short presentation in your community about how people can reduce disturbance and help loons survive. So lake associations every summer are always looking for speakers, and loons are always a hot I know they're a hot topic, because for 20 years before I did my Maine Lakes job, I was the loon project director at Maine Audubon, and I know how much people love loons and love to hear about loons. And in 20 years, I started repeating myself, going back to lake associations that I'd been to early on, and they were just as enthusiastic the second time as they were the first time that I talked to them. So I know the appetite for loon natural history information is huge. People love to hear about loons. So lake associations are great audiences. Libraries are becoming increasingly centers for community activities. Our library just had a great talk on Big Night. They're having, for amphibians, they have a whole series on friendly lawns, how to manage your lawn to be friendly, earth friendly, less pesticides, herbicides. So there's a big market out there from libraries looking for presentations. Civic organizations, maybe some of you are in a civic organization and could host a Lookout for Loon speaker. And then towns, getting involved, making presentations to towns or selectmen. to let them know what's going on with loons in their communities. So James will have a slideshow. He'll have an online, he didn't set them up before he went, but in May we'll have some specific trainings for presentations. We'll have a slideshow ready to go. We'll have a narrative written out. You don't have to stick to it, but it'll be there for you to use, to crib from. And it won't be, won't be diving deep into loon natural history, but it'll be enough to, we know that it'll cover things that people are interested in, and we'll have some other resources as well. So that will be together in the next probably 2 weeks after James gets back. That'll be ready to go, and he'll start hosting some presentation trainings, and he's available to meet with people. He could potentially go to do a venue with you and walk through it with you. You could do it on Zoom, do a practice session with James. So there's lots of opportunities for training for these. So if this interests you, we will help you feel comfortable and be ready to give a presentation on loon disturbance. Q&A sessions, we're working out some details. Some of you may have courtesy boat inspection programs at your public launches. We want to be sure we work with them in a way that works, that we don't want to interfere with CBI and their courtesy boat inspection for invasive plants, but I think there's room for people to be at boating launches at the busiest time of the summer. Maybe we provide a poster with just a photo of a loon and says questions on the top, and then a picture of a loon. Maybe it's something that you can set up at a boat launch and just answer questions. If there's a loon on the lake, you might point out where the loons are nesting and make a request like, slow down, stay out of this cove, be on the lookout. People are definitely curious, but I know sometimes people want to keep it a secret, and that's certainly, that's an approach that works too. But if you are game to share information with people about the loons' whereabouts, I do think in general, in most cases, I think it's helpful. So being at a boat launch, a couple of busy Saturdays during the summer, especially when in July. So loons typically hatch their chicks from, let's say they lay eggs from, I used to have this memorized, May 1st to May, month of May, they're mid-May to mid-June is when they're typically laying eggs, and then eggs are hatching mid-June to mid-July. So really sort of the most vulnerable part of the year for loon chicks is usually right around the 4th of July and a couple of weeks after that. So getting people, having people aware of loons, nesting loons, especially at that time, could be really, really beneficial. Coffee chats, that's worked sometimes. I know lake associations sometimes set those up. Maybe there's an opportunity to just meet with people. Maybe there's a trail or a public swimming beach in your town or someplace. Maybe you can set up a 1-hour walk and talk, or bring binoculars and have people look for loons. There's lots of possibilities for Q&A sessions. We're really open to whatever might work for you and your community. Outreach materials. This is definitely like the low-hanging fruit. This is one that anybody can do. Just distribute materials to town halls, libraries, fishing clubs, boat launch kiosks, etc. So we have these two. We have How Close is Too Close, which is a Maine Audubon, put that together last year, that has some stress behaviors of loons. Then there's Living in Loon Territory, and there's a couple other pieces that Maine Audubon has that are really helpful. And I know distributing brochures isn't, it's definitely an action we can take. It's better to be talking to people, but I learned from brochures, and I love a good brochure. So I know I'm not in the majority, but we know there's people like me out there. So getting you these materials and having you distribute them in your community is a great option for Lookout for Loons. Supporting fish lead free. So I mentioned Maine Audubon's taking the lead on fish lead free, and we so we can work with them, but they do have resources to get the word out about lead tackle. So people have been hosting over the last couple of years, well, actually for a long time, people have been hosting tackle exchanges. So we can get materials, lead-free tackle for you that you could bring to a boat launch or a Q&A session or a presentation. You can collect lead tackle from people. There is a coupon program that Maine Audubon runs, and we can work with them to get, if there's a tackle shop in your community that you want to participate in the voucher program, or you want to give out vouchers for existing vouchers for the way that has worked is people turn in lead tackle and then they get a $10 coupon to spend at a tackle shop on lead-free tackle. So that's a possibility. That's the tackle buyback program. And then in that picture, sort of disassembled, the PVC pipe picture is, I should have one assembled, but it's a type of device that people have built and put out at different locations. The boat launch people, IFNW isn't wild about having them at their boat launches, but they just set up like an upside down kind of J, and people can put in their lead tackle, and we can collect lead tackle that way. So those are all options. Signage at high risk lakes. So I don't know if the sign on the left looks familiar to you at all. That's a sign that's been out at Maine Audubon for a long time. And we still have those. They're plastic, they're durable, they are really good all-purpose signs that can be posted with if it's on land with landowner permission. You can put, they can be floated. You can build like an A-frame float for these signs. So they're pretty general, and there's lots of different ways that people have used those in the past. And then on the right, the stay away loons nesting, that's a metal sign that we're working with IFNW on that, on where to put those signs. So we talked in our proposal for this money, we talked about putting up rope barriers and putting out signs on the water. IFNW is nervous about that, so we're working with them to make sure we're doing that on lakes, on the high risk lakes where we know there's been where there's some documentation of injury to loons in the past. So that's kind of a specialized group of you potentially who are on those high risk lakes, but James has been working on his list, and so we'll be in touch with people from high risk lakes to see if that kind of sign is a possibility. So I just have a couple more slides. Really just asking you the question of what else will work. So what other ideas do you have for decreasing disturbance, decreasing mortality, increasing survival? That's what we're going for with this project. And so if you have other ideas, we'd love to hear them. So our next steps is we'll send out an email to everybody once James gets back. We'll send out an email with more specific training opportunities, both online and in person, depending. It's hard to organize because we don't know where all of you will be as active. If hopefully some of you follow up with this program, then kind of depends on where you are, but we'll figure out how to get James together with you in person. James will be at the, we have a Lakes conference this summer. There hasn't been an in-person Lakes conference since 2019, and we're really excited that this year's conference is at China Lake Conference Center, and it's hosted by Maine Lakes, with us, and with our colleagues at Lake Stewards of Maine, who I'm sure there are lots of people on this call from Lake Stewards who, if you work as a water quality monitor or an invasive plant patrol with them, We'll all be there together at this conference. So there'll be some Loon information. Tracy Hart from Maine Audubon, I think, is going to lead a couple Loon tours on China Lake. So that'll be a great opportunity if you're interested in coming to that. So here's some contact information for you. This presentation's been recorded. I'll make sure you all have the link back to the recording if there's something you didn't write down or wanted to follow up on, I'll get this to you. But here's James and James's email. And then Olivia, you met earlier today. You can reach her at the Loon Restoration email at loonrestoration@maineaudubon.org. And so I'll leave that up there, but I think I may have to take it down to do my last poll. Oh, no, maybe not. Here it is. It's over here. So I'm going to do 2 more polls and then open it up to questions. So this poll is just, after you heard what you heard tonight, have you changed? Have I moved you at all to get more involved? Are there particular, you can do multiple, it's a multiple choice. It's a multiple answer question. So if there are, you can check multiple boxes. And you can certainly take more time to think it over. I know I've thrown a lot at you. And as I said, a lot of it still a little bit moving. There's a lot of moving pieces still. So I'll just leave that open for a few more seconds. Oh, lots of yeses. So that's good to see. Ooh. So I love to see people, it's awesome to see. I'm really excited to see people interested in presentations. So thank you all in advance for those who are stepping up for that. I think I'll give it one more minute, 5 seconds. All right. So I'll share it just so you can see what you participated in. So lots of interest, and one person is not your thing, and that's absolutely fine. So thank you all for that. And then my last poll is just because we're always sort of wondering, we have limited funds, but we want to be sure we're thinking of things. Let me see. This one won't let me. What did I do wrong? I had one more about incentives, and if you would want things like a t-shirt or recognition or, but I don't know why it's not letting me launch that poll. All right, well, that's okay. That's something we can get back in touch with you about. So with that, I will stop my screen share, and I'll just open it up to questions and answers from anybody. You can, I guess, raise your hand if you can find that feature. Raise your hand, and yeah, Janice, you have your hand up.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, I put my hand up earlier because I was just trying to respond to something. I'm trying to figure out how to do it, and I didn't do that very well. So to be involved, I just wanted to make sure that, I'm very interested in being involved in any of these various ways.
Fantastic. It's great. It's awesome. Great to hear that. Barbara, did you have a question?
I was just wondering, just listening, you were looking for suggestions. I don't know if this would be helpful or not, but I'm thinking if you did some kind of event with kids always have to bring their parents, something, kids love loons also. And now
Yeah.
you've got kids, how can you protect the loons? How can you save them? And meanwhile, you're probably forcing the parents to come and hear it also.
That's a great idea. I know China Lake Association every summer, spring, they do a poster contest in the schools up in China, and it's always hugely popular. And then they give awards for the loon, give awards
Right,
for.
anything like that where they come and they do loon crafts. Just for an hour and a half, there's some kind of loon crafts, there's some kind of loon ice cream, I don't even know, you know what I'm saying? Anything to get them there so you can do the spiel, especially to the parents, and teach the kids early. Because if the
Yeah, and
kids care about the loons, then they're gonna make their parents slow down.
Yeah, and there are some, Maine Audubon has some supplies. When I was there, we used to do like loon headbands,
There you
and
go.
so there's some resources like that we could definitely get to you. So that's a great idea to add to our menu. Thank you.
Well, I was looking in the chat and there were a couple questions.
Oh
Two are
yeah, thank
similar.
you.
Debbie and Deborah would like to know where to get the signs, brochures, details, etc.
Yes, we will. James will be. That's a question for James. He will be working on that. We'll definitely have all the materials you'd want at our conference. So that will be a big pickup location, and then we'll just work on mailing things to you. We'll try as much as we can to use staff who are traveling. The Maine Audubon team's traveling all over a lot. They're covering a lot of ground. You may be able to meet up with them to pick up materials. So James will get that organized, and we will definitely get you whatever you need.
Great. There's another question in the chat. Monica wants to know how we can stay informed about legislation that impacts lakes and loons.
Ooh, that's a great question. So if you go to our website, lakes.me/advocacy, we have all the lake bills that are up right now are listed there, and it's like an accordion fold thing. Each one has a blue button. If you click there, you can see the latest. And I'll just tell you, because these are both these are all relevant to loons. The wake boat bill I mentioned there'll be a floor vote for that coming up, because it was voted ought not to pass, and the minority wants it to come before the floor. So we will be undergoing a big effort to get everybody to contact your legislator. Doesn't matter if they're on what committee they're on, because it's a floor vote. It'll be open to everybody. So kind of looking forward to this effort. So we'll definitely need people to speak up for that. And on that lakes.me/advocacy, I don't remember, somewhere on that page, there's a note, there's a place to click to get on our grassroots or legislative alert list. And if you sign up for that, we will definitely be reaching out about the wake boat bill. There's also a couple of really important invasive species bills coming up. One, to increase the sticker fee to try to get more funding to prevent the risk of spread for invasives. And there's a clean, drain, dry bill that's trying to make a rule that requires boats to have their drain plugs opened when they're moving between water bodies, with the goal of trying to get those ballast tanks and other water holding units on boats dry, so they're not moving invasive species around. So that's kind of what we're keeping our eye on at the moment. But check that lakes.me/advocacy and sign up for our legislative alerts. Thank you so much for asking about that. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, hold on one sec, Scott. I see Scott. Is that a wave or oh, you're just waving. Go ahead, Paul.
Yes, good presentation so far. I'm enjoying it.
Good.
I've listened to probably 3 different loon demonstrations or presentations. currently working with Tracy Hart with Maine Audubon in Falmouth. I have built a cedar raft already, which I sent pictures to her.
Awesome.
I am going to float that. Actually, it's floating right now, but it's right at my beach. And I'm going to put that out because I've had loon rafts before that I built. Okay, and I've hatched out a couple of chicks.
Oh, nice.
My question, I guess, is that this is between Maine Audubon and Maine Lakes. You're overlapping me here a little bit. Tracy is she's a great person. She's very knowledgeable. She knows about what I'm doing, but she's letting me do it by myself. Okay, and with her guidance.
Oh,
She
yeah.
she provided me with all the materials, and I made a cedar log raft with a nest box with oyster floats underneath it. I put an avant-garde over the top of it with um, with boughs with pine and evergreen on top of it. So the eagles, which we have a big problem with on Lake Sebasticook, which brings me to another question. I don't hear too awfully much that's going on above China Lake. Are you involved in the Newport Sebasticook Lake area at all? I have signs that I've put out. I've talked to the town about it. I've talked to the association about it. I'm feeling just we're crossing over here, and I'm not sure exactly where I'm landing on this.
Are you talking about signs about the raft or about other things?
Both. I have both of those signs, the yellow sign and then the loon nesting sign already. Okay,
So,
and that's already on my raft. So
China, there's China Lake Association is really active, and I'd be happy to put you in touch with their president, and they're really active and are doing a whole bunch of things with the lake. So I'm sure they'd love to talk to you and hear what you're doing.
Okay.
So I'm sure I have your email from this webinar. So I'll follow up and make sure you know who to talk to over there, because they're really active and doing a lot of work. So, and they do have a loon raft on, at least one on China Lake, and maybe two. So I know they're involved. So great.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I'd like to be involved in all of this, but I'm getting a push and a pull here, so I'm not sure. I can't do both.
Yeah.
So, whatever consolidation that could be happening would be appreciated.
Great. Thank you so much for doing all that. Anybody else have questions?
There's it looks like Scott has a question, and there's also two questions in the chat. I don't know which we should do first. We can do the chat. I think they showed up.
Sure.
So Anne asks, we, like other lakes, have already had many events where loon topics have been covered. Info is available via their newsletters or pictures. Is it one centralized portal, or will James create one place to share all of the photos and efforts being made across all Maine lakes? We can share them with each other, and it could be used to demonstrate outcomes.
Yeah, that's a really good suggestion. I don't think we've gotten that far, but we did have and we should add this to the menu somewhere that, you know, if your lake association or your organization is already doing things or is continuing things that they've already done, that they've been doing, we will have a, like a Google form that we're going to ask volunteers to fill out. Like if you go do a presentation, we want to know, you know, short, not an essay about your presentation, but you know, where you went, how many people were there, kind of, you know, did you hand out brochures? Did you hand out lead sinkers? So we're trying to quantify how much outreach is happening as a result of this project. And that includes things like a Lake Association newsletter. Like if you put a newsletter article about loon disturbance, those are some things that we can help with in terms of providing some of that kind of information that can go in a newsletter. So that's a new tool for our toolbox to add, would be some kind of pre-packaged articles that you could get, and we'd love to know if you're putting them in, how many people they're reaching. And I think along with that form, you know, I think it's a great idea to collect photos of what everybody's doing, and sharing those that's a great idea. So thank you so much, Anne, for that.
And then one quick question before Scott, do we need permission to post signs?
Yes. So if it's a high risk lake, we have to work with IF&W and get their okay to do that. And then the orange signs, if they're posted on you know, for posting on land, we definitely need permission for the boat launch. If it's a public boat launch, you just need to figure out who owns it and get permission, or if it's on land. We have people who post them just along the shoreline near a nest, but obviously that has to be shoreline that's owned, or you have to have permission from homeowners, and we can help with that. You know, if there's a specific place that people want to put signs, James and I we can help get in touch with with landowners and make all that work. But good question. Yes, absolutely. I once had somebody when I worked for Maine Audubon who bought like 20 signs, and I didn't really put it together, but they put up 20 signs on property that did not belong to them. And I fielded a lot of angry calls from homeowners who had not given permission, and all these signs had gone up on their land. And of course they were thinking it had been Maine Audubon. So, and it was not, but so good reminder. Scott.
Hi, Susan, and
Scott.
everyone here. A lot of familiar names. This is a great initiative, and I'll look forward to doing what I can to help this summer. I will probably be spending time on somewhere between 15 and 20 lakes this summer, and I'm speaking at a number of lake association meetings, and I'd certainly be willing to make information available to folks, you know, at those events, and to distribute materials to people as I meet with them on my various trips around the state to different lakes. I did have one question about, you know, whether or not it would be appropriate through this particular initiative to broach the subject of bioaccumulation of mercury, you know, another toxin that threatens loon populations. And we may be soon talking about you know, it's maybe premature right now because of the emerging research, but bioaccumulation of PFAS substances as well, since loons are eating pretty close to the top of the food chain. And, you know, we do know that, you know, some lakes in the state now are showing elevated levels of PFAS. So that was my question, and I'm happy to help wherever I can.
Well, thank you. That's awesome that you're doing all that work and going out there, and I'd be happy to work with you, you know, getting you specific slides or, you know, certainly all the brochures or paper. We're always big on paper. We can get you paper, we can get you slides. And that's a really good question about mercury and bioaccumulation. You know, that'd be worth discussing. I'm not sure what I would tell people to do about that. I mean, it's definitely a big issue, and you know, loons were one of the first. You know, those studies of mercury started you know, they kind of started the whole mercury ball rolling for wildlife contamination and mercury. So good question. I don't have a good answer for you, but I'd love to talk more about it.
Sure. And I mean, just as a quick follow-up, I'm not sure that there is a good answer to that question because, you know, I've been talking about mercury contamination with groups of volunteers that I've trained around the state for years. And, you know, the question is, well, what can we do? What can individuals do? And, you know, you can go out and yell and scream about the fact that, you know, we are in this state that we're in today where wildlife is being poisoned by mercury in our lakes and ponds, and where the potential for people to be affected is there as well. With, you know, that's why we have fish consumption advisories. It's a sad state of affairs. But just because individuals can't do something, you know, individuals can make noise with their legislators, and that can have an effect over time.
Yeah, yeah, that's really a really good point, especially I think as PFAS emerges here. Really good point to remember, and especially and sharing fish eating advisories, because people are still not aware of the full extent of those, and those are changing. So thanks, that's good, all good information. Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you all for listening. We'll get the recording out. You'll hear from James in May, but I'll maybe do a quick email just to connect with all of you. You'll hear from James in May, and you know, if you don't want to hear from him, no worries. We'll we won't sign you up for any mailing list or anything, but we will reach out to make sure, see what you want to do, see how we can help, get you materials that you need, and yeah, I'm really excited to have that so many people showed up, that you're interested. And again, Olivia and her team over at Maine Audubon, Tracy Hart is over there. And they've got a bunch of people on staff working on this. So she's the person to connect about rafts. We'll connect with you about outreach. And again, thank you so much for coming. And especially all those loon counters. I love to see your names here. And we'll keep in touch. So thank you very much, everybody.